In a crazy yet not so crazy trade deadline, Ken Holland has tweaked the makeup of the Edmonton Oilers heading into the final stretch of the season, and it could be a massive change that leads to hockey's greatest trophy. But before we dive into the video, we've noticed that around 98% of our viewers are not even subscribed, which is crazy to think. So if you want to stay up to date on all the latest Oilers news, make sure to hit that subscribe button for Oilers Digest by hitting that little red button under that video. Now let's dive into the video. First off, we're gonna have what the Oilers look like post trade deadline. Now, the Oilers, they've made some changes. They've added 3 players. Now, it's not a lot of people that may, they might start to wonder if the Oilers are a better team following the trade deadline. And the answer on paper is, yeah, absolutely. They are for sure better. But are they good enough to win the cup? And that's a question many are starting to wonder after, losing 2 games, one in a shootout and the other one in regulation against the Columbus Blue Jackets and then the Buffalo Sabres right after the trade deadline. Now, heading into the trade deadline, the Oilers' priorities were, to pick up a top 6 winger, a depth forward, and a depth defenseman. Now, Ken Holland, he was able to do almost all of that and didn't give up too much in the process. Arguably the only thing that he really gave up was that first overall pick. Leading into the trade deadline, and a lot of people were saying or thinking that, Broberg or a Lavoie or, a Bourgault could be potentially in that list of players, or even a Holloway that could have been traded. He was able to retain all of those players and just giving up picks, which is huge for the team because that's the future. That's the future of the team that, just in case players end up leaving in the future, those are future assets. On top of that, he didn't give up any players on the actual roster. And in addition, he added Adam Henrique, Sam Carrick, and Troy Stetcher to the lineup without giving up, a roster player. It's huge. It's not the most sparkling acquisitions, but they definitely matter, especially since the Oilers were also in on Tanev, Eberle, and Gensel and didn't get any of those 3. So if you look at the way the team has been made up, it's pretty good so far. But if you're looking a little bit deeper, that's the lineup that was played in Buffalo on Saturday. So you have Nugent-Hopkins, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman reunited at that top line, and they didn't play too, whenever you have a Zach Hyman, Connor McDavid, or Nugent-Hopkins together, they're going to produce. But they weren't the best line that the Oilers had. Ryan McLeod, Leon Draisaitl, and Warren Foegele were actually the best line. That third line is quite intriguing because it's got grit, it's got a veteran presence, and it's got everything you really need. Evander Kane, he's a shooter. Adam Henrique, he's good in the faceoffs, and he's a consistent 40 to 50 point go-getter. And Corey Perry has all the experience in the world. But when you go look at that fourth line with Janmark, Carrick, and Brown, there's still a lot of question marks surrounding that line, right? So if you look at the first, second, and third line, those are pretty dominant lines in the NHL. If you think about it, a lot of teams would be looking at the third line and wishing they had it. But if you look at their stats against the Columbus Blue Jackets, so they were pretty close in shots on goal, face-off percentages. They were still winning in the face-off circle, which we're going to dive into a little bit further into the video here. But 54% against the Columbus Blue Jackets which is incredible. But the biggest thing is when you go into Buffalo on Saturday, they had an 80% face-off percentage and they had 32 shots on goal and they still fell. The one thing that is really stands out to me is the 40 hits by the Buffalo Sabres. Obviously, power play being at 0%, that's a big issue for the Oilers. They can't have their power play going at 0. Obviously, they're not going to score every game, but if you have your power play going at 0, it's not good. But that 40 hits to 14 is a big standout because they brought in these players to make the team heavier, bigger, badder, meaner to go deeper in the playoffs, yet they're letting the Buffalo Sabres run all over them, which is a bit concerning. But if you look a little bit deeper into the advanced stats, the Oilers still to this day, as of Saturday, their expected goals for is still number 1 in the NHL, right? So they're expected to score. And although they didn't do that the last 2 games, how often are you going to say, oh yeah, the Oilers put up 1 or 2 goals? It's not going to happen. They added Adam Henrique, who's a consistent 40 to 50 point getter. That is consistent and huge for this team that is looking to go deep into the playoffs. You need these players that are consistent. That's the biggest thing. You can't have players like Connor Brown. Now, he sat in the press box against Columbus and the Oilers still lost. So what is that saying? Maybe he isn't just the issue. Maybe the fourth line not scoring isn't the issue. The Oilers, their expected goals for is quite high. Going back to it, like goals for, goals against, if you look at their goals against, they're top, I think, 5 or 6 in the NHL for expected goals against. I mean, not expected to get scored on, which is quite high. But then when you look at their high danger chances, they are still top of the NHL as well for high danger chances for 130 points ahead of the Carolina Hurricanes, which they've played an extra game on top of that. And it's remarkable. It's absolutely phenomenal, but yet the puck just does not want to get into the net. So when you look at the players, yeah, maybe a top 6 player would have been better to get for the Edmonton Oilers, but those bottom end pieces are, they're quite crucial. You need to have those types of players. You need to. And history shows us that if they're not scoring goals, the goals are going to come. When you have the most expected goals for, and you're one of the lowest expected goals against, and your high danger chances is number 1 in the NHL, you're going to score. And that's just the bottom line. People are freaking out. You're on Twitter, you're seeing all these tweets. People are like, oh, the Oilers, maybe they did bad at the trade deadline. Who knows? It's 2 games. How are you supposed to expect? How are you going to know after 2 games? They're still one of the highest for high danger chances. They're still one of the highest goals, for expected. What are you complaining about? You got Connor McDavid, you got Leon Draisaitl. Yeah, you can't win all 82 games in a season. It's like everyone throws up their hands after they lost that winning streak and it's like, it's all turmoil all over again. Listen, the Oilers are going to be a good team. They were a good team before the trade deadline. They're an even better team after the trade deadline. And it's crazy to see these tweets and these comments online saying, Ken Holland failed at the deadline and the Oilers are not a good team. The Oilers are still projected in the top 5 to win the Stanley Cup. I don't know what everyone's going on about. It's crazy. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Go back to that third line. Look at this third line. Evander Kane, Adam Henrique, and Corey Perry. Where are you going to find a third line like that? You're not going to find it anywhere. They got one of the best third lines. If they keep that, that's a phenomenal third line. What more do you want? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Let me know if I'm out to lunch. Because it's like, I don't know. What are we complaining about? We got to win. Yeah, of course. But the numbers show that the Oilers are in a good spot. And if you don't agree with me, let me know. Thanks for watching.